Hi, and welcome to Module 1 of the full PMQ pack now. We're going to talk about preparing yourself for what's to come and getting the most out of the materials that we have available for you. Right, let's go back to basics on this. This is the pack that you've got access to. Hopefully by now you've done the body of knowledge. Even the most experienced project managers or even program managers should have found some stuff in there they haven't dealt with before and gained some benefit from brushing up a lot of the kind of concepts we know and deal with on a daily basis. But when you stand back and look at it through the eyes of the body of knowledge or the kind of theory of it, we quite often find opportunities to refresh what we know and understand. And hopefully some of the ideas about what you could do to improve things back in your workplace, you're going to take on board. So they're more than just a basic knowledge exercise when you do them. We want you to actually get better and find ways to improve your organization. Okay, so now we're coming into the PMQ materials themselves. So we've got 5 modules here for you to work with. Obviously, you're on module 1 at the moment, where we're going to talk a little bit about preparing for the exam. But later in this module, you're going to be doing your first questions on the PMQ syllabus. It's important to remember just that when you're doing them, that the software doesn't actually store your answer. So when it asks you to type in what you think, remember that you won't be able to get back to that information. So just as if that was a trainer talking to you, you need to make some notes as you're going along so that you make sure you've got good records for when you need to brush up for the exam. Okay, so then there's 4 more modules, and our approach to this is we want to help you be better at delivering projects through the life cycle. So we've got modules that start at the beginning and work their way through to project controls and closure at the end. And you'll be getting to know the case study, which is Project Reno, which is where you're going to choose a house to redecorate or not regenerate and hopefully make some money out of it. So what you're doing during the materials is you're going to work your way through the information and the concepts that you need to deal with at that stage. So the actual modules, for example, risk, we deal with risk at the very start, you know, the strategic risk. Then as you get into definition, the options and the risks that those bring. Then when you get into delivery, it's the risks about the ongoing management of the resources and the people involved. So we kind of change our focus on risk, on business case, and all that stuff. So you'll see an evolving approach during the life cycle of the materials. But most of all, what we wanted to do is get you to think about which techniques are used and where. Now, one of the things that we've used for the base of this is a book we wrote called Practical Guide to Planning. And if you look at APM and if you look at Prince 2 and some of the other modules, they're very good at throwing ideas about planning at you, but they don't expect you to, they don't tell you where and when to use them. And that's what we've tried to deal with in our modules. We've tried to help you know where to use those materials, where and why, and how to get the most out of them. Okay, I've mentioned the case study. So then don't forget, we've got you this P3M framework, which is a portal that we built a few years ago as the best in class for our clients. So it covers portfolio, program, and project management. And rather than seeing them as separate items, we've seen them as part of the same whole. So as part of portfolio management, we've used MOP, which is the best practice guide on portfolio management, but we've made it much more practical so that you can use it rather than it being a kind of theoretical model. We've taken MSP, which is, you know, the best one out there in our view, but that's because we wrote the book. But anyway, but we've taken it and applied it to a scenario that you can use to run any program. Yeah. And then when we get into the project level, we've used a bit of Prince 2 and a bit of MSP, sorry, and even a bit of MSP, and a big chunk of APM to actually help you do things to run a project. So you can use the P3M framework. And of course, in the exam, you could cross-reference it because the examiners would need to go, they need to know it was there. It's their job to know about these things. So that's fine as well. Then around it, we've got a bunch of other guides. The how-to guides are about how to use techniques. We've got FAQ pages, which are quick guides, basically, and how you might do something like a product description or something like that. And then, of course, we've got the APM guidance around the exam. So there's a whole package of things that you can use to find your way through to a pass mark in this exam and actually get those letters after your name, MAPM. Okay, so we've created this checklist called Fab Boris or Fab Stories, whichever one you prefer. When we think about project management, there's probably 20 odd processes that are operating at any one time. And when you're in the exam room under pressure, they may ask you some questions that you kind of go blank on, you know, roles and responsibilities. What sort of things would stakeholders be interested in? Where might you go looking for costs, etc., etc. So we've created this list. So if you can just get that in your head, Fab Boris or Fab Stories, whichever you want to use. And if you're in the exam room and you go have a blank, these will help you through. So Fab Boris or Fab Stories, we got what do you need to know about in project management? What could be roles and responsibilities, could be about, or a stakeholder interest, or whatever it happens to be. So we've come up with this. Finance and budgets, yeah, that's the cost of the project. Assets and deliverables, the things that you make or the things that you're changing. Timetables and plans, you know, the schedule that you're going to be working with. Business justification, the business case, that's a critical thing. Often a question around that you might need to then think about, well, what goes into the business case? Well, there you go. You can come back and go resources, outcomes, issues, risks, scope, all that sort of stuff. Okay, outcomes and benefits are the reason you do the project. Resources, whether it's physical or human, about how you're going to actually deliver this thing. Issues and risks, and scope and quality, the areas that you use for control. So it's a useful checklist to get in your head. It's not the perfect answer to anything, but it's certainly the start of a decent answer to most things if you can't remember exactly what's in the body of knowledge. Okay, we also have this thing called FAPIA. So now I've already mentioned about 20 processes. Now, at any one time, they could ask you to describe the steps or explain the process or something or other. And if you're in the exam room and you just go, oh no, a blank, right? I can't remember what the process is for risk or stakeholder or whatever it is. The FAPIA model is really helpful because all those processes are roughly the same. All right. So you basically find or identify things, you analyze them, you plan to deal with them, you implement them, and you review it. Okay, so you find stakeholders, you find issues, you find risks, whatever it happens to be. So thinking in terms of the FAPIA as the answer to the process questions would get you out of jail, basically. I mean, if you're lucky enough to remember the stakeholder process, or you remember the risk process, or the configuration management process, whatever it happens to be, if you remember those, fantastic, you don't need it. But if you're actually in the exam room and you're thinking, I need to find a couple more steps, well, what were the steps? What are the steps? Well, there's always identification, there's always analysis and planning and implementation. Okay, so we really hope that FAPIA will help you through. So you've got Fab Boris or Fab Stories and FAPIA to work with. So that's the purpose of those checklists, right? And when you did the body of knowledge stuff, you would have seen all those things in there quite regularly. Now, when you come to do an exam question, a real problem that we're having with box 7 is people are not reading the questions. So there are 5 key words that they will start the question with, and you need to think about how you're going to answer that question. Now, when you get into the course, we've done a slide on each one of these. We've used the Collins Dictionary to get a definition for the words, describe or explain. We've then talked about what the examiner might be looking for, and then we've given you some examples of where it might be used. So, it might ask you to differentiate between risk management process and risk planning. Yeah, well, obviously risk planning is part of risk management, but it might ask you to explain the differences. It might ask you to state the reasons for, which is mainly you're looking at a list. Same would be outline, just give a summary. State and outline are going to be lower scoring questions probably. Explains likely to be the higher scoring type questions because they want to look, what they're looking for is depth and knowledge from you. All right. Again, describe a bit more depth than outline, for example, but it'll all be reflecting the actual questions that you're seeing. The marking scheme will tell you how deep you need to go. So here are some of the common reasons for failure that came out of the first year of Box 7, and they're pretty straightforward, aren't they? Yeah, and I've already covered most of them. So not getting confused, describe versus explain, and we've given you the information to help with this. Yeah, candidates not providing enough evidence to demonstrate depth of knowledge, and we, throughout this course, we're going to give you chances to show your knowledge, and then we're going to give you some example answers of things that you might have wanted to include. We probably go over the top. Yeah, if it asks for 5 things, we'll give you 7 or 8 things, because we're hoping that actually you'll see your 5 things amongst our 7 and 8. Because they ask for 5 things, there's probably 10 options. So we try to do that sort of thing. All right. You need to answer the question. So if they ask you for one reason, don't give them 3. All right. So you get no extra marks for going beyond what they've asked you. See, a lot of people are wasting time in that area. All right. The 4th point there, yeah, not being specific enough. Now, we've really worked on this with you, right? In those delivery modules, it's answering the question at that stage of the project. We really want you to get thinking about that, and we built the whole module around helping you do that. Thinking about concepts, or a concept stage, or a stage in the life cycle. Now, again, if you go and have a look in the PMP framework, it's all built around the life cycle. All the guidance is for that step in the life cycle. And it's not just a stage, we do steps as well. So it's a massive amount of information that you can use. And of course, you can use that when you go back to work as well. Okay, and differentiate. But you'll notice that all of these are around people not using their common sense around the use of the right words and the context, which again is why we've done all the stuff on case studies. And for every section of the syllabus, we've given you a potential, not sample answer, but a suggested topics that you might use in that answer, which again comes back to the use of Fab Boris and Fab Stories, or the use of FAPIA. We're really trying to equip you. Now, there's an awful lot of knowledge coming your way, so you just need to be systematic in the way you do it. But when you come to do this exam, we don't want it to be a memory test and you forget it on Monday. We want you to have used our e-learning materials to really, really get your head around project management. And so by the time those letters MAPM appear after your name, you'll be nailed on and competent. Okay, so good luck with module 1 and with the future modules, where the videos talk much more about actually the modules themselves, rather than in this case where I'm really talking about the exam and you preparing. And remember, you've got to keep notes. You've got to keep notes all the way through. Yeah, it's not that if you type it into the app, it doesn't remember it. It's just there to make it interactive. Okay, so good luck, and we're really looking forward to seeing you being another one added to our 100% records.